Hey everyone, and welcome back to Timeless. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new, rebuilt from the ground up Jetstorm deck. So the Timeless meta has been hugely shaken up by Chrome Mox. The entire meta has been in flux and been redefining itself ever since Aether Drift came out, and it was entirely because of this one card. It's pretty clear that Chrome Mox gives unfair decks a critical mass of fast mana where they can almost always have it in their opening hand, and the answers can't really keep up with the threats. So it's been a little bit of a race to the bottom, trying to figure out who can figure out the craziest Chrome Mox deck. People have had a lot of ideas, from like Red Prison to Belcher, but this right here that we're looking at is one of the best ones that I've seen so far, if not the best in my opinion as of right now. Of course, the meta can and still will evolve. So a lot of people have concluded that the best thing to do with a little bit of extra black mana is play Sorin, downtick, and put Saint Alinda into play. And I gotta agree. Putting a 7 mana card into play that is flexible, where it lets you draft whatever card out of the spellbook you want, right? Allows you to answer any permanent that's in play. That's very, very strong. And it is a great thing to do ahead of schedule, especially turn them on the play. Also, of course, just jamming a Necropotence is incredibly, incredibly strong. And people have been building decks around it, right? People have done Sorin plus Belcher, Sorin plus Scam, Sorin in mid-range decks, Sorin with Bailmerk. People have put together a lot of decks, but this is trying to marry it to the Jetstorm concept. Now, Sorin is still plan A for this deck, and Jetstorm has taken a bit more of a supporting role, plan B, and why I really like Jetstorm in the supporting role is because a lot of these cards that you run to support Jetstorm, things like these Treasure Dorks here, also just support Sorin really well, right? Because you can have, for example, a Greedy Freebooter plus Phyrexian Tower opening hand, and that enables you to get Sorin down one turn earlier, or get your Necropotence down one turn earlier. So this deck is fully capable of doing the Jetstorm kill, but it also just has much more direct ways to win in Sorin plus Alenda or just Necro for a million cards and smother your opponent in card advantage. Now you might notice that a lot of the traditional Jetstorm cards are not present, including the original card Jet Medallion. That is because the combo has been redefined a bit around since Priest of Gix when this came out a couple of months ago. I actually didn't even have Priest of Gix crafted before I tried out this deck the other day, but I'm top 100 with the deck right now. So it's very, very strong, and I was able to pick it up pretty quickly based on my old knowledge of Jet. So I have faith you guys are going to get there too. So just to quickly explain the loops, Priest of Gix plus Chthonian Nightmare, if you have 2 copies of this and you loop it back and forth, it is infinite mana, right? Because it costs 2 mana to cast your Nightmare. This gives you 3 mana once you bring it back. So you just one sacrifice the other, infinite mana. Once you have infinite mana, you can do anything with this deck, right? Infinite mana lets you sacrifice your supplier infinite times, getting yourself infinite mill. You can also get infinite treasure tokens and scry your whole library. What's really cool is that when you Chthonian Nightmare these 1-drops, you end up with excess energy, meaning you could reanimate Alenda. When you reanimate Alenda, you get a card from the spellbook every time, meaning that this deck now also has access to infinite card draw through Alenda's very infrequently picked 4th card in the spellbook. And what's really cool is Vein Ripper, our alternate Sorin target, is the new version of Marionette Apprentice for this deck. You can go ahead and mill your whole library, reanimate the Vein Ripper, and kill your opponent on the spot doing the Jetstorm kill. Now note this is slightly worse than Marionette Apprentice in the sense that it does not kill through effects that give protection or hexproof because it says target opponent on it. So if your opponent plays the One Ring, this actually will not be able to kill on the spot, but you probably have the ability to reanimate Alenda instead of Vein Ripper at that point, right? So just Face Fetters the One Ring, get a bunch of creatures into play, and you will probably kill them next turn, right? That's more or less how it works. There's a lot of lines with this deck. Greaseball is currently working on a written guide for this deck, and of course this came from Greaseball. I don't remember if I credited him already, but Greaseball and Marley came up with this build. So Greaseball is working on the written guide, and hopefully it'll come out right at the same time as this video, and the written guide and the video can accompany each other. Because there are a lot of obscure lines, like for example, Taco Bite was playing this deck too, trying it out, and he didn't realize that these 3 cards together are actually infinite, because what you could do, if you have your Chthonian Nightmare, you loop these 2 cards infinite time because it's mana neutral, right? And you scry your library to put a certain card on top, and then you cast Stitcher's Supplier once to mill that card, which would be -2 mana, but you had 4 mana to start the loop because you cast Chthonian Nightmare twice, right? So then you would have 2 mana left, but the card you put on top of your library is probably Priest of Gix. So at that point, you recast Nightmare, and then you do your infinite mana loop, and then you do the infinite from there, right? There's a lot of really narrow things like that that I probably couldn't explain well at all just looking at the card list. So please read the written guide. and you'll understand that, because there's so many like situational things. For example, in that situation as well, if you just have this, right? And the one copy is Stitcher Supplier. What you could do is you could scry Saint Alenda to the top of your deck, and then play Stitcher Supplier to mill it, and then just reanimate the Saint Alenda, because you're going to have excess energy, right? Because this generates 3 energy per play, and you're not using all 3 energy every single time. So then you can reanimate Alenda, and usually your opponent will just scoop to a reanimated Alenda. Alenda also gives you extra bodies if you go ahead and grab the Cleric, so then you could sacrifice those bodies to Chthonian Nightmare and keep doing your thing. This deck does a lot of very, very interesting things, while also being able to interact with your opponent a little bit by playing 4 Grief. 4 Grief plus Phyrexian Tower. I will say, I have put Grief under Phyrexian Tower more times with this deck already than I ever did with Jetstorm. This deck benefits a lot from that little extra burst of mana. Grief plus Phyrexian Tower plus Chrome Mox Openers give you 3 mana on turn 1, and that will come up pretty frequently, or just on turn 2. Grief plus Tower plus any of these lands here. Only change I made to the list from Greaseball is I didn't have these Verges. This is technically the correct card to play, but I was cheap. I didn't want to craft it, so we're playing Courtyards instead. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. As for sideboarding, you are trying not to overboard with decks like this. You're generally going to only bring in 4 or 5 cards at a time, sometimes less even. If your opponent really isn't messing you up, you don't need to bring in that much. What's really cool about this deck is we run a lot of tutors and we run a lot of card draw. So 1 copy of a given sideboard card will go very, very far. So even just like 1 copy of this Westfold Rider here to blow up artifacts and enchantments goes really, really far. 1 copy of Surgical Extraction will draw that more often than not. 1 copy of the March, 1 copy of the Meathook Massacre, right? You can see what sorts of things that we're going to bring this in against. Those of Leyline of Sanctity in case we end up against Belcher decks, especially Black Belcher decks that are both going to try to kill us by targeting us and try to discard us. We have some Duresses to fight back against unfair decks. We have Angel of Dawn. Duress is also great against control. Any blue deck. We also have Angel of Dawn here. This is a really interesting alchemy card. It's another way to stop opposing Sorin decks because it's not symmetrical, right? So if you're on the play, you stick this turn 1, your opponent can't do the thing. If you were to try to play a hate bear like Archon of Emeria instead, you would just end up screwing up yourself more often than not. So this is a really, really cool one. 1 copy of Disruptor, Flute Define, Fragment Reality, which is an incredibly underplayed card. It is a great way to just get rid of something like a Pithing Needle for absolutely free. And everything else is just situational one-ups, right? I believe that's all I have to say for the deck tech. Again, Greaseball's guide is going to come out. Please read that. In my opinion, this is very well positioned in the meta because it is very consistent in what it does. The Jetstorm package does a great job in supporting the Sorin package, and try hard to not view this as like Jetstorm, right? You're not going for a Jetstorm kill every game. You're doing it less than 50% of the time, I think. But if you have the ability to go for a Jetstorm kill, absolutely do so. All right, this deck's super fun. Let's go ahead and play some games on ladder. All right, game 1. We are going to be up against the Danny Boy. We unfortunately lost the die roll, so that means we lost the game already. This hand does not quite get there. Keep in mind, these decks are pretty mulligan intensive. You can't just keep any 7 that has a mix of lands and spells. You need to ask yourself, does this hand do anything? And the answer here is no. We could play Sorin, but he doesn't do anything. We could grief our opponent, but then we have no follow-up. So let's go ahead and mulligan this one. This does the Jetstorm thing. Yeah, actually, I'm cool with keeping this. It's actually totally fine. If we get discarded here, we're going to have some trouble. But what we can do is we can go ahead and play turn 1 Stitcher Supplier, sacrifice it to Phyrexian Tower, then we'll have 3 mana on turn 2, and then go like Priest, Chthonian Nightmare. If we get interacted with, our hand is going to do absolutely nothing because our opponent can just like take the Nightmare. But if we don't get interacted with, oh boy, that's when we get to go off. All right, Saint Alenda. As you'll see, this deck does have quite a few dead draws sometimes. There's an argument to wait to play Stitcher Supplier, to play around like Solitude, Source of Plowshares, etc. I don't think my opponent is on white if they're opening with Undercity Sewers. And also, we wouldn't have 3 mana next turn if we waited, right? So our opponent looks like they're a fair blue deck. It looks like they're going to try to mana drain us here, which is unfortunate, right? We only have 1 copy of Chthonian Nightmare. I do really want to make sure it resolves. So I'm going to go ahead and attack with my Stitcher Supplier just for now. Just offer a nice little attack here. My opponent will probably take 1 damage, though they might decide to use a removal spell on it. If they do, that means we're going to almost definitely be able to resolve this Chthonian Nightmare, and that's going to make me a happy boy. All right, sweet. Let's go ahead and play Phyrexian Tower Nightmare. if they happen to have a spell snare in the main deck, I'll be very upset. So we don't have a creature to sacrifice, but we will once we play the Priest Gix. And we were like very close to just going off here. We're going to be able to play these. We'll get the mana back right away. We'll have 3 mana floating. And we did mill another Priest Gix, so actually we do get to just go off, assuming that our Priest resolves. Of course, my opponent is a counterspell deck. They actually are probably a show and tell deck now that we see green in their mana base, right? So they could just win this turn. However, we have our trump card. We have a Lunde here. So if they just jam show and tell, we have the ability to hit their Omniscience. And there's the Grief. All right, so since we have extra Priest Gix in the graveyard, we know what's up. We can just go ahead and grief them here. So play my Swamp. I would like to grief you, please. Clear any mana drains that you might have in your hand. My opponent will say, no thank you, I'm not going to show you what deck I'm playing. That's actually very understandable because I don't know if they're playing show and tell or not. I don't know if I need sideboard for that. So the win from here, we were just going to play the Priest of Dix. We were going to sacrifice Grief to Tower, just give us 1 more mana, just in case we needed it. And then we could just loop these Priests infinitely, get infinite mana, loop Stitcher Supplier infinitely, and get infinite mill. And then we just win the game. Okay. So what are we doing? So if it's show and tell, Ley in Line of Sanctity is not going to do very much. And unfortunately, we're playing this card to blow up artifacts and enchantments, which is sorcery only. So that also wouldn't work. So we're going to go ahead and want the Duresses here. And then often what I do is I cut a lot of these Treasury Orcs. I talked to Greaseball and I asked him because I wasn't sure if this is 100% correct. Because I was cutting Shambling Ghast first and he said it probably cut Stitchers first. Then maybe cut some of these, cut 1 copy of Nightmare. This is for versus other combo decks, of course. Versus fair decks, you're going to want to cut your discard, things like Grief. So if we only want to bring in those 2 cards versus show and tell, that's fine. We also think about bringing in like a Flute to name show and tell. Could bring in Angel, because they could be degenerate fast mana as well. I don't think that's quite worth it. I think just the 2 duress is going to be enough to try to knock them off of their combo thing. Again, we're not 100% sure it's show and tell, but Sultai almost always means show and tell here. And since we won, we're going to be going second again, unfortunately. So once again, we've missed the most important part of the deck. Wow, this is interesting. So this hand doesn't do anything at all. It imprints some mana onto her Chrome Moxes and it duresses them once. That's not enough. Go again. All right, now this has a Demonic Tutor in it, so I'm going to be pretty inclined to keep it. This isn't a great hand, though. Could we do better? Is our average 5 better? Sornalenda just better? I think we could just jam DT and then like immediately tutor for something good. I think this is going to be fine. So we get to DT on turn 1 here. DT on turn 1 for something. Might be a Necro. Oh, Grief. That's a good one. Yeah, Grief makes me pretty confident. I think we're going to Grief up my opponent first before we do like literally anything here. Grief, pitch Nightmare because we don't have any of our other Jetstorm cards, so get out of here. We're probably going to DT for Necropotence. Probably. No promises. All right, opponent, what are you on? I don't know your deck at all. Of course, they could have Veil of Summer here if they're show and tell gaming. Looks like they do. Okay. I'll just help confirm that they're show and tell gaming. So unfortunately, we don't have a way to DT and stick a Necro this turn. But I think I'm going to be pretty happy DTing for a Necro. I think there are tiny arguments to DT for Saint Elenda specifically because we can put her into play to blow up show and tell. But if we just get her and then draw nothing else, then we're screwed, right? We need to be able to draw some cards here. Now my opponent could just hold up mana drain mana and make me feel like a big idiot here. Brazen Borrower, yikes. Okay. Thankfully, that was actually pretty good because I can still just stick my Necro. Let's go ahead and do that. And then when I have extra cards in hand before I Necro and a Chrome Mox, I almost always just throw them under the Chrome Mox. Just so that I can draw a fresh 7. And I think since we're up against a combo deck, I'm going to draw a little deeper. Against a fairy deck, I would only draw 7 here. Against the combo deck, we'd probably draw 10. And hopefully in this 10, we can find a Saint Alinda, we can find a Grief, we can find something. They do have the ability to just cast the card Show and Tell next turn, actually, so I'm going to do 2 more. Just so that I'm pretty sure I have something to put into play off of Show and Tell. If they didn't have the ability to win the game next turn, I would not Necro this aggressively. I would be a lot more chill. I'm often pretty chill at my Necros with this deck, where I only Necro for like 7 cards to get myself to hand size. We do have the ability to do Dark Ritual, but it doesn't let us cast anything else. So let's go ahead and keep like a Tower and Urborg for lands, and then we can get rid of the other ones. That's a no-brainer, right? And then honestly, we could probably get rid of the Urborg as well. And then we get to discard 1 more. Does the extra copy of Saint Alinda help us? I believe the answer is no. So if they Show and Tell here, we can Saint Alinda blow up the Omniscience. Of course, they could have Born Upon a Wind, but you can't play around everything at once. We unfortunately didn't find discard when we drew that many cards. We had 5 more discard spells to hit in our deck, and we didn't. But we can't complain too much because we did draw like the pieces for Jetstorm. Assemble the team? Yep. Okay. My turn. Neat. So I could Dark Ritual right away and then just do some Freebooter loops. That's pretty good. All right, I know Greaseball's watching me, so I got to get this sequencing right. Add my black mana. Put you under. My opponent might scoop to this, or might not. I don't judge them if they don't scoop here. Oh, hey, that's the perfect card to have on top if I were able to draw a card. But I can't draw a card, right? No way to draw a card here. I could exile it to Necro. In fact, that might be what I do, right? Because that would pretty much guarantee a win next turn. So let me really quickly do this. Well, wait. Now we can loop here. So we have infinite scries, which is neat. And then I can probably just like double grief my opponent once I put the right card on top of my library here. So bring this back. So we can loop these 2 cards as many times as we want to more or less stack our library. I want that duress too, actually. Excuse me, I will Necro 1 more time. I like that card. See, this is the nitty gritty of this deck, right? Really like high skill, deciding like what you want to do, what you're scrying on top. And then at a certain point, we're going to be done, right? And probably just reanimate a Grief. Oh, there's Vein Ripper on top. The thing is, I don't have a source of mill, right? No, sir, I just have a Grief in the bin. I don't need this, though. I want to mill it eventually, so actually let's put it on the bottom so we don't accidentally exile it. So now I'm thinking, is there a point to me continuing to do this loop? I think at this point, I just want to reanimate Grief twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Reanimate Grief. Take a look at your hand. Hey, look, it's Omniscience, Atraxa, and Show and Tell. All right, let's take that. Okay, they're done. They're done here. So we had a little bit of extra mana here, which means we could have griefed them again. I would have absolutely griefed them again to take the Omniscience out of their hand. And then we would be able to untap and do the Sorin Alenda thing. I'm doing a commentary live, right? So I didn't have too much time to mull over my decisions and think about whether or not it was absolutely correct to do what I did. But I liked what we did where we scried cards on top and I said, oh yeah, I want this card next turn. And then we put it into our hand. That was pretty good. So it's a way to guarantee that we win when we untap after we double grief our opponent. That was a really good demonstrative game 1. All right, game 2, we're going to be on the draw. So again, we're failing at the most important skill, playing Jetstorm, being on the play. And we have a hand that doesn't quite get there. It presents a Necro on turn 3, but that is way too slow for current Timeless. All right, what we got here? We have almost keepable, right? If we had like a treasure dork here, we could totally jam it turn 2 Necro. But unfortunately, with these awkward double towers, we're never going to be able to play Necropotence unless we get lucky and draw creatures. So let's go to 5. We can have much better 5s. And then this 5 is actually going to be quite keepable. So what I like here is we have Phyrexian Tower plus Grief. So what we can do, I'm thinking of keeping it like this, right? Is this a good keep? What do you think, guys? So we evoke Grief, turn 1, right? Turn 1 evoke Grief, and then with the floating mana we play our Treasure Dork, and then the next turn we DI, depending on what we draw. I think this is the most reasonable line to victory. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's going to be better than a 4-card hand. I'm thinking that maybe it's better to have a Boggart Trawler? No. I think this is the best we can get. It does rely on some top deck luck, but what's really cool is the Diabolic Intent lets us to be flexible in what other card we get to support our strategy. All right, cool. So now I don't even need to necessarily go all in Drew Swamp. I could just like start off with a Treasure Dork. Our opponent did Lurrus Basic Island. What do you mean? Why'd you do that? Let's go ahead and start with our Treasure Dork, actually, I think. We're gonna wait a turn before griefing. Could definitely be a mistake. But this is a better line if we do draw something like a Necro off the top of the deck. Or if I do decide I just want to use my DI right away for whatever reason. I really can't think of a reason that would cause that, but we have the option now. Alright, we're being sorted. Yeah, look at that. My opponent is being smart. Holy moly. So this is the exact thing I talked to Greaseball about right before this. It's so funny. I literally said the phrase, damn, it's bold of you to assume that ladder players are smart enough to Solitude, or in this case, Swords, a Treasure Dork. But yeah, absolutely that's something that could happen. So now we don't have the Treasure Dork to put under Phyrexian Tower. Now, of course, we have Grief instead. So we're totally fine here. I'm thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to do here, guys? Can I put a Necro into play this turn? If I tried really hard, right? Phyrexian Tower, put this under here. I'll have 3 mana, but then I need to pitch a card away to Grief. Yeah, so if we Grief like this, we can DI this turn, but then the DI doesn't necessarily get me there, right? Oh, I'm having trouble making this decision. I'm gonna go ahead and play my Supplier. I'm just gonna play it out. Ooh, Priest of Gix, that's a good one. Okay, so now we can DI for Chthonian Nightmare. I would need a creature in play, so... I would need a creature in play. I'm gonna pass one more time. I need another creature so that I can successfully get my Nightmare loop going. Okay, Saint Elenda, you're not the creature I needed. So I hope you guys realize what I'm agonizing over is I know I have the infinite mana once I get a Nightmare into my hand. I just need to get a Nightmare into my hand and then have a creature in play, right? And I can't do that without sacrificing a creature for Diabolic Intent. Hardcast Grief is on the table if we want to use Dark Ritual for it. Is that something that we actually want to do here? I think so, right? Not sure if I'm getting the sequencing right this game, to be honest with y'all. But what am I going to do? I'm just going to like pass back to my Lurrus control opponent. See whether or not this just gets countered. There's a good chance it does. In that case, we'll just pass. We'll chill. We'll chill, but our odds of like winning decreases pretty quickly. All right, we're just gonna try to put a 4 mana Grief on the stack. This might get mana drained, and my opponent will have access to like 8 mana next turn. Yeah. Yeah, I think on turn 1 I should have very aggressively Griefed after seeing that they're a blue deck, right? I think that would have been the play. But you live and you learn here. I also did give them the opportunity to Solitude the Treasure Dork, which is really funny. So if you're playing in a tournament, definitely don't do that. And maybe ladder players are smart enough to know to do that. All right, we do have lots of draws that win us the game, assuming we can resolve a card, right? If we resolve Chthonian Nightmare, we actually win because we have Infinite Anna and Vein Ripper over here, which is pretty neat. Infinite mana, infinite mill, infinite everything. Bro, again, they're so smart. My opponent knows how to play against Jetstorm. All right, let this be a lesson to everyone, huh? All right, if we don't draw very well, I think I'll just go ahead and scoop it up. I don't know. I'm trying to balance entertainment value in the video versus not giving up ridiculously early, but I don't think there's a way that we win against control at this point. Given my opponent is on like full control Lurrus. But it's possible that they have just nothing in hand. Very unlikely, but possible. They're taking a while with like their scry decisions, so I would hope that they don't have very much. Anyway, if they can hold up mana drain forever, I think we just lose. I'm just gonna concede. So up against control here, we're gonna want the 2 extra duress. We're probably gonna do the exact same sideboarding as last time, which is pretty funny, right? 2 extra duress, and then we could just go ahead and do like cut. And run it back like this. I'd also consider playing like Fragment Reality, because they could play a hate piece against us, and that would be a way to clear the hate piece. Perhaps 1 copy of that is worth it. All right, we're going to be on the play this time, and we're going to be able to stick a Necro on turn 1. So this demonstrates the fact that sometimes this deck can just win. And we get to grief them too in case they have Commandeer. Now, my dreams of griefing them are now dead to this ley line here, but that's fine. That just means we can put grief under the Chrome Mox instead. Commandeer this, fool. Ah, they didn't. Good. So do they just scoop? It's gotta be so frustrating to try to play like Lurrus control in this meta and just have like a guy go turn 1 Necro on you. Like, what are you supposed to do other than cry and complain? Alright, neat. We have Sorin mana, but no actual win with Sorin. We also don't have a Jetstorm win, but that's fine. We'll get there somehow. We'll go ahead and put back Boggart Trawler. So next turn, we can probably just like vomit our hand and then just draw a bunch more cards. Big fan of vomiting my hand into play at the earliest opportunity here. Alright, there's Tamiel. So they could have Flare Denial up now. I can go ahead and lead with this Dark Ritual and then see what happens. Might get countered. If it gets countered, like this is kind of flare bait because I'm not winning the game off of this. All right, how about this one? Again, this is not going to win me the game, so you don't need to flare it. They will flare it, though. Okay, cool. I kind of wanted that card in my graveyard. Oh, never mind. They're being really disciplined, saving the flare for, like, Sorin or whatever. So I think I will go ahead and, like, play this Sorin here. If they flare it, so what? I don't have a Lenda. You thought I had a Lenda? You fool. Instead, I shall simply supply the Stitchers. Alright, cool. I was going to say, before we milled this Treasure Dork here, that, oh, I'm going to keep this Treasure Dork in hand for my Jetstorm loops. But now I don't need to. Now I'm just going to get my hand empty so I can draw a fresh 7 and not have to discard anything. Cool. So we have a lot of eventuality here. We have a lot of ways to draw a card that does just win the game, and we also have 3 power in play that can just repeatedly attack our opponent if they have nothing else going on here. Nightmare is a card that does just win the game right now, yeah, especially with that other priest draw. That's deterministic if we can resolve a spell. Alright, Meticulous Archive. Tapping for rainbow colors, of course, because of Urborg. Oh, our opponent's trying stock up. Stock up the flavor of the week. Right, let's go ahead and play this Phyrexian Tower. No downside to this thing because of Urborg, which is awesome. Go ahead and attack our opponent. They could have another one. They could have a 1 mana counter. They could not. Do I need the extra mana? Oh, I can leave up tower. Yeah, let's leave up tower in case I do want the extra mana. Because if this gets countered, we could just play Nightmare and go off, which is so funny. And now if Nightmare gets countered, we have extra Nightmares. Opponent surveying for damage. Damage report. Very neat. Let's go ahead and put a Priest of Gix in the graveyard with our Phyrexian Tower, and we'll be done here. Alright, so all we need to do is loop this a bunch of times, and if my opponent makes me do it, I will fast forward. This is infinite mana. And they should know I have a Stitchers in play. Oh, they have a Surgical? Oh, that's tough, yo. That's tough. Alright. Yeah, we accept our fate. We have been surgicaled. That's a tough one. So we have a Saint Helena in the graveyard that we could still reanimate with Chthonian Nightmare, given enough casts. Yeah, that is tough. Oh, and you know, another really cool thing I could have maybe tried to do is Necro in response to this Surgical. Specifically, so that I could try to, like, exile a Priest of Gix. Keep it there. What I'm going to do here, since my opponent doesn't have a way to interact, is resolve this Sorin. So that we could just draw an Elenda and win the game. We don't have anything to minus, so the loss here. Alright, we have extra Nightmares in hand that we don't mind discarding, so let's Necro a little bit. Getting a little low on life here, unfortunately. But next turn, we'll have a bit of mana. Oh, there's a DT, so we can just DT for Elenda. Never mind. There's no decision-making involved. We could Fragment Reality the Leyline, too, if we really found the need, or if they, for example, fluted Sorin. But next turn, we're just going to like DT for Elenda, put it into our hand. If that didn't happen, we would have had an interesting turn where we could Chthonian Nightmare, just looping the 1-drops a couple times, and then eventually reanimate Saint Elenda. If we had enough mana for it. That would I think we would need to draw some fast mana to make that happen. Though we did draw a little bit in the form of Chrome Mox. Opponent is surveying the battlefield, surveying the damage here, deciding whether or not they're dead. If they Surgical Saint Elenda here, then we could still grab Vein Ripper out of our deck with DT. I wonder if that's something I should do. If I should play around another Surgical and just DT for Vein Ripper instead. Stock up, you got it. So my opponent has to find a free card here. Surgical Extraction could be one of them, so I think I will try my absolute best to play around Surgical next turn. Alright. I am going to go to combat. My opponent is not getting priority, so I know they don't have Surgical. I know that's a kind of a lame way to do it, but I'm going to DT for Elenda here. I'm sorry, that was kind of lame. I used the Arena Tell to make sure they didn't have priority. Because what my opponent could have done, which would have been really scary, is in response to Sorin's -3, before the -3 resolves while it's on the stack, they Surgical this and pull it out of my hand. If they did get priority, like they had a Surgical, I would have tutored for Vein Ripper there. And Vein Ripper is really good in play when you have a Nightmare in hand, because then I could just start looping things and draining my opponent, though it wouldn't work through Leyline. I would have to fragment the Leyline. Food for thought, though. Anyway, wow, that was a lot of yapping. I'm lost. Game 3 versus Control. We're going to be on the draw. Hopefully, we just have a I win on turn 1 forehead kind of hand, so I don't have to think too hard. All right, Game 3 versus Control. Would you look at that? We have an I win hand. They were, I think, blue-white Control without access to black thus far. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So we just get to grief him here. And just jam Necro. It's just that simple. Even though we're on the draw, it is just that simple. Sweet. We'll get rid of a Priest here. We could get rid of a Dark Ritual instead, but we don't have the rest of the Jetstorm combo in our hands, so we can get rid of a Priest. It's fine. All right, opponent, I would like to grief you. May I? Thank you. Another frustrating moment for if you are a honest tax-paying blue Control player. Imagine that, guys. This guy pays taxes. Alright. So we take the Spell Pierce here. I understand that my Necropotence is gonna get fragmented. I accept it. Spell Pierce. land, Dark Ritual, Priest of Gix, Necro. And then my Necro gets turned into something else. Some random treasure dork, and I'm going to be pretty happy with that, to be honest. Then here we're going to go ahead and draw a bunch of cards. They could also just Swords this Priest of Gix, which I really would not be too upset about. The real danger card in play for my opponent is the Necro. If they target it with Fragment, I'll have the opportunity to draw more cards, guys. Don't worry. I'm not under Necroing. I probably want to get one more card, though. We'll go to 8 cards, discard 1. Like, we don't need to try to win next turn, as long as this Necro stays in play. If it doesn't stay in play, I will draw a bunch more. Opponent's waiting until now. I guess they're surveilling. You have your surveil in hand, though, buddy. Oh, you got 2. Okay. Alright, so now what's cool is if my opponent untaps and decides to fragment the Necro, then I could just draw more cards, and they won't show up in my hand until my next end step, meaning I won't have to, like, discard most of them. I also could just keep another Necro, which is just funny to me, guys. I'm gonna say no to it, but I think we've drawn enough cards. We will have drawn enough cards. I have declared it. Next turn, we're gonna go, like, Writ, Priest, Grief. I don't know, just dump our hand. Dump our hand in, honestly, a pretty fair manner for this deck. I actually don't even need to use both Writs. I could just use one Writ. Okay. Cool. I'm going to go to combat and attack my opponent. I'll play a Phyrexian Tower. I'll play a Dark Ritual. I will play Priest of Gix. And then I will play a Grief. And I'm just going to draw a few more cards. I really don't think we need to rush it today against control. And if they give me the opportunity to take Fragment, I think that's what I'm going to take. Swords on Grief. Okay. I accept. Yeah, I'm not going to take Lorien to try to, like, mana screw them. That card doesn't really do much. We gained 4 life there, guys. That means we get to Necro more. I could Necro a lot more aggressively. Actually, knowing that they're on a 1-outer to, like, draw counter magic, I want to just do another couple cards just to maybe increase my chances of hitting Sorin. Because I know I have Sorin mana pretty guaranteed. Oh, Duress here. Yeah. Chrome Mox's Sorin. Okay, we hit the perfect cards. Okay, sometimes he's just lucky. Do we want all these Chrome Moxen? Oh, I want to keep Chthonian Nightmare because it does the thing. I'll get rid of a Chrome Mox. It's actually too much mana. Look at this hand, guys. Holy moly. We got Discard, we got Sorin Alenda, we got the fast mana, we got the Jetstorm kill. My opponent has given up on life. Honestly, I agree. Hard knock life trying to play fair blue control in the current meta. Alright, game 1 with a new Greaseball deck. Sorry, game 3. We're up against Newbie, who I believe has been spamming Boros Energy on ladder. The one guy keeping Boros Energy alive. This hand's great. We've lost the die roll in 3 out of 3 videos. I'm a pretty poor combo player, that's why I stick to energy, you know? Okay, Dark Ritual, Necro. We're of course going to take our opportunity to grief our opponent first, getting rid of this extra mana source that I won't be able to play this turn. And Arid Mesa Gigantha does confirm that my boy over here is almost definitely going to be playing some energy. I'll just take these 2 cards. Wait, why didn't you play Pride on 1? I don't know. Wait, actually, why didn't he do that? Do I really want to grief the swords now, or do we want to do it later? Because then we'd have to lose a Dark Ritual to do it. Losing a Dark Ritual really sucks. I'm going to keep my Dark Ritual. We'll hold the grief. If they had a card that was a lot more immediately actionable, like a counter spell to screw me up next turn, I would definitely rethink that. We'll try to 8 cards in hand here. Maybe I could have... No, I don't think there's a strong enough argument to keep that mana source. Draw one more card. I want to make sure I actually hit my land. I want to make my land drops versus energy. The classic timeless situation. Alright, neat. Priest Gex. Everything. We got too many Dark Rituals in our hand, actually. I might throw away a Dark Ritual, which sounds kind of crazy. Throw away a Treasure Dork here. Yeah, throw away the Dork if I don't have a way to sacrifice it, and the extra Elenda. I don't think how to do the mana. Ah, Guidacles. Cool. What do we want to do here? We want to play Priest Gex into Grief, probably. So let's go ahead and do Chrome Mox. Print the Dark Ritual here, because we're not going to use it. Let's get our hand empty here, right? Dark Ritual. Priest of Gex, Grief. One or both of these might get exiled. It's honestly fine. Like, I'm totally cool to trade for what's in my opponent's hand. The important part is they're going to be down to 0 castable spells after I grief them. That is fine. I gain 2 life. Priest is useful to have in the graveyard, but we don't have the rest of our Jetstorm combo right now, so fine. And then we'll draw 6 to get to hand size. I would consider necroing more aggressively if we didn't absolutely shred this energy player's hand and they had the potential to kill us. But really, the worst thing they could draw is Amped Raptor, which would just result in us taking 3 damage from a flying Guidacles if they hit well. Ooh, Chthonian Nightmare, we could do the Jetstorm thing. Okay, and Demonic Tutor for a Sorin for a later turn. I'm very happy with that. Okay, yeah. Opponent's just chilling here. Cool. So we have absolutely no reason to attack our opponent here. They also don't play Discard in their deck because they're just Boros energy, so we're going to grab Sorin. And then we're also going to play a Dork. I could grief them, but like, why? I'll grief them next turn and just make sure that they don't have a Swords to Plowshares or something like that. Second Guidacles, you got it, buddy. Alright, I guess we're just gonna grief their Gigantha and we're gonna be happy about it. Sorin. Minus. Saint Elenda, how you feeling, opponent? I'm just gonna go for board state here and turn my guys sideways. Alright. So against Energy Gaming here, it's usually Grief is what you're cutting against Energy Gaming. They're not Mardu energy, so we don't need to bring in defensive ley lines or anything, but we want these anti-creature cards, the Mythic, the March. We probably want Fragment Reality because how Boros energy beats you is they play those white hate pieces, right? And the colorless artifacts as well. They're going to be playing Deafening Silence, they're going to be playing Pithing Needle, and Fragment Reality is a really nice way to get rid of those. All right, game 2. Up against Newbie. We got turn 1 Necro. I don't think we need to use our brain here, right? Monkey Brain C, turn 1 Necro, Monkey Brain keep. I'm not making monkey noises, don't ask me to. And again, I really don't like mind playing my Priest to Gix House and having it eat a Swords to Plowshares. I'd rather this eat it than Elenda. And I'm thinking I actually Necro for a very small amount because like I'm gonna play these cards next turn, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Guide Pride. That's the good opener for them. We can go ahead and Fragment Reality Guidacles just to slow them down. The thing is we don't have the mana for it yet. So now we gotta ask ourselves, what are we doing? What are we doing with this DI, right? What are we doing here, gang? We could also... Oh, wait, yeah. Secret, flavor text. There's flavor text on Shambling Ghast, in case you guys didn't know. You never use it in this deck except when there's a kitty cat on the battlefield. Goodbye. I had to show that in the video. Was it optimal? I don't know. It's what I thought of. Okay, so now we're going to do the grease ball trick. Who knows the grease ball trick? Raise your hand. I know it. So the grease ball trick is when you Necro first. We're going to Necro to put 7 more cards into our hand, right? Resolve. And then we're going to tutor. while we search our deck, we can see what's in our deck, right? Because there are 4 copies of Sorin and 4 Alendas between the deck and exile. So if I search the deck right now, I see there's only 3 Alendas in the deck. That means we exiled an Alenda. I see there's 4 Sorins in the deck. That means no Sorin is coming to our hand. So we're going to DI for Sorin. All right. You guys are going to pass the pop quiz next week, right? All right, neat. Yeah, there's the Alenda that we knew was coming. See? You guys are experts now. Okay. Discard 5 cards. Just discard some junk, man. I don't know. Get rid of the junk. We want to keep Fragment Reality concealed just in case my opponent does decide to get kind of funny and flute Sorin right here, right now. I guess Priest of Gix is like most useless. Yeah, I already have a Priest in the bin. A Stitchers, actually I already have a Stitchers in the bin, and Double Priest is so much more useful than Double Stitchers, so. I mean, yeah. If I was just playing by myself and not recording, I would probably spend a little bit more time mulling over the decisions. You can get really, really granular here. Ah, Blood Moon. Not enough. Nice try, though. Alright, so now we get to do the Sorin Alenda thing, because we did the Grease Ball trick. Do I want to blow up Blood Moon, guys? I think I actually need like double black if we're gonna actually do some Mythic Massacre shenanigans in the near future, so I'm gonna invoke the Divine here. Yeah, 1 card over. So my opponent hasn't instantly scooped. They probably have a Swords for Saint Alenda. I will be able to Mythic Massacre their board, though. We don't need extra Nightmares, and my opponent can't counterspell it, so we can just get rid of it. One ring, sure. My opponent is going to try to grind through this. That's fine. I don't blame him. It's a good play to try and grind. All right, my turn. I can't do the Jetstorm kill through the One Ring, as I said in the duck deck. But what we can do is we can... Wait, does Mythic Massacre work? Oh, shoot, it does. One moment. Hold on. I gotta fire up my brain. Gotta do it on all cylinders. Watch this, guys. Sometimes I'm smart. Sometimes I'm not. But today is one of those days we're gonna be generally intelligent. Watch. Watch and learn. When a creature your opponent controls dies, you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Yep. Priest of Gix. Yep. Chthonian Nightmare. Loop me. Alright. And now we win, right? Unless I'm very stupid and I don't know how magic cards work. Protection does not prevent loss of life, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, scoop it up, newbie. Alright, we're going to end it on that high note. That was a really good win. We won 3 in a row, even though I looked like a dumbass playing my Treasure Dork into Exile spell against control. That was pretty good. I have high hopes for this deck in the future of the meta. Greaseball's working on his guide. I will probably wait until he's done with that to release this video. So that guide should be pinned in a comment. I hope it's pinned in a comment. Alright, you guys have fun. Tell Greaseball I did a good job, and I'll see you next video.